Marvel and DC Chaos, Dumbledore powers unleashed across universes. Episode 141. The sky is gray, the earth is also gray, and between the two, there is a black river full of fog without knowing the source and the end. Riverbank edge. Next to a dead tree that curved hideously and almost hung into the black water, a ragged skeleton curled up behind a rock. It looked dead for a long time, and the lantern it was holding in its arms had long been extinguished. Suddenly, in this dead land, there were footsteps coming from far and near, very abrupt, but no less clear. After a while, a figure slowly walked to the skeleton's side and spoke. "Ferryman, I want to enter the underworld." The voice fell, and the extinguished lantern lit up with a faint green light. The skeleton creaked and raised its head with difficulty like a rusty part. The next second it makes a hoarse sound. "How many years have passed, and there are still undead here? Is the underworld reconnected to the human world?" "It didn't." The figure responded faintly. "Sure enough, I thought too much." After saying a sentence with regret, two black flames appeared in the skeleton's eyes, and he said in surprise, "Huh? You turned out to be human. Why, can't humans take boats?" Russell asked calmly. The skeleton shook his head with difficulty and said, "Of course you can sit, but can you pull me? I haven't touched in thousands of years." Russell reached out and held the other's knuckles with slight force. With a click, he directly pulled the opponent's arm off his body. The atmosphere was somewhat silent for a while. The spark in the skeleton's eyes jumped for a moment, as if thinking, and said after a few seconds, "If you don't dislike it, please hold my head and carry my lantern. I should not be able to stand up." Russell didn't care and just did it. After walking to the shore of the Blackwater River, the skeleton head softly called melodious syllables, and the river tumbled. A few seconds later, a broken ship with only a few meters rose from underwater. Skeleton commanded, "Put the lantern on the bow of the ship, and it will illuminate the fog and guide us forward." Russell stepped into the boat and placed the lantern and skull on the bow. The next moment, the ship slowly moved forward. As time passed, the surrounding scenery was nothing but fog. I don't know how long later, the skeleton suddenly spoke. "Here we are." Sure enough, as the sound fell, the surrounding fog dispersed, and the boat was already leaning against the shore. Russell looked into the distance. It was a huge plain of black rocks, with no edge. "The underworld has arrived." The skeleton spoke again, with a hint of urging in his voice. Russell was still staring at the wish, and seemed a little lost. After a dozen breaths, "Why don't you go ashore?" Skeleton asked puzzled. "Why don't you want gold coins?" Russell sighed. The skeleton was silent for a moment, and the next second black flames burst out from its eye sockets, forming a hideous and terrifying black ghost. "Obediently become my substitute. It has been waiting for this opportunity for 3,000 years, and it will not give up even if it dies. And what it has to do is very simple. Force the other party to leave the ship." Once the ship-taker who did not pay gold coins went ashore, then the original ferryman was replaced, and it will be free, like the last soul who deceived itself. However, in the next second, it was horrified to find that the other party had strangled its neck. Ignorant and fearless, "Just let me free you," Russell said lightly, and hellfire appeared in his hand, burning the ferryman's soul almost instantly. In the next second, Russell flicked his thumb. A gold coin landed precisely on the skull. Russell turned his head to look again, and the originally endless black rock plain had disappeared. In its place, a red dirt road stretches into the distance, flanked by endless cliffs. It's like the bottom of an endless abyss. Russell stepped out, constantly flashing along the road, and disappeared into the distance in the blink of an eye. Inside the huge and empty black temple, 12 huge columns are lined up on both sides, and the dome falls with a dim glow. At the end of the main hall, on a huge throne made entirely of ribs, a black shadow sits quietly on it. But when the perspective is zoomed in, you will find that it is not a black shadow, but a huge, black armor. Time seems to freeze here. Nothing has changed, as if it has remained unchanged for eternity. I don't know how long it took. Bang bang bang. A tumbling sound suddenly sounded in the silent hall, breaking the eternal calm. On the white bone throne, the black armor first trembled, and then two red rays appeared in the gap of the face armor. It looked at the ground, and then seemed to tilt its head a little strangely. Then a dry voice came from the armor. "This, be three-headed dog?" But in his memory, the three-headed dog of hell guarding the door is 3 heads, and there should not be only one left. At this time, a voice sounded in the main hall. "Sorry, the other 2 heads were confiscated by me, and this is the only thing left. Actually, I didn't want to slaughter it. But you, the master, are too careless, starving it to almost only bones, and you want to bite me when you see me." This voice was flat and complaining, but it seemed out of place in this hall of the god of the underworld, and there was no trace of respect. The armor looked up and saw a man in a black and gold trench coat walking in with a casual face. This moment seems to trigger something. The pitch-black armor suddenly surged up, turning into black liquid and continuously penetrating inward. A few seconds later, the black ceiling armor disappeared. In its place was a man in a black robe, with a thick white beard and a solemn face sitting on the white bone throne. Hades completely woke up from his slumber at this moment, and his eyes looked down with coldness. "Human beings, why don't you kneel when you see God?" Russell smiled slightly, not caring at all. "Sorry, I haven't seen a hunter kneel down to his prey. What do you say, Hades?" The already dark Hades hall became pitch black in an instant. Everything seemed to have disappeared, and only a voice of anger with majesty sounded. Blasphemy is punishable. At the moment when the words fell, a violent roar sounded in the dark space. Then as the entire hall shook, the wail sounded again. The next moment, the milky white halo gradually expelled the darkness. Hades looked up. I saw that the back of that blasphemous opened its white wings, exuding a soft and holy light. And at the feet of the other party, a pitch-black, muscular beast is being trampled under its feet and wailing. It was his newly resurrected, three-headed dog of hell. With a crisp fracture sound, Russell slowly raised his head, and the corners of his mouth hooked up little by little. Look, you didn't understand what I meant by my last sentence. Remembering the words of the hunter and the prey, Hades' eyes became even colder. Why, trying to provoke me? No, no, no. Russell shook his denial, revealing 2 rows of white teeth, staring at Hades, dead and smiling. I actually mean, I can really fight. Episode 142. Above the sacred mountain of Olympus, which is hundreds of thousands of meters high, a huge and magnificent palace stands proudly on the top of the mountain. And in the sky directly above, a huge dark cloud vortex like the Eye of Doom continues to fall. Lightning strikes above, exuding a burst of divine power. This is the palace of Zeus, the king of the gods, and the center of the god world. But unlike the lifeless atmosphere of the underworld, the smell of flowers and wine wafts here. Even the laughter of the goddess was faintly heard from the depths of the palace. Inside the garden, Zeus wore a dark blue divine robe and teased several newly sealed goddesses while drinking wine. Although the Amazonian female warriors were not brought to the god realm, hundreds of thousands of devout believers did bring them. This can maintain faith and keep the power of the gods from declining. At the same time, these believers could also work and worship the gods. Now, this group has grown to a population of several million, and Zeus will promote some goddesses from time to satisfy his desires. Of course, these so-called goddesses are only the lowest level of existence in the god lineage. It doesn't make much difference to say that she is a maid, she does not share a trace of faith, and her lifespan is only a few hundred. As for Hera, the queen of heaven, since the gods had disappeared, they had not cared about Zeus, and the two had not seen each other for hundreds of years. Now Zeus even liked this kind of life, and felt that it was far more comfortable than in the early days, and did not need any combat calculations. But just when he felt like foreplay was about the same and wanted to play something more fun, the entire sacred mountain of Olympus trembled. Zeus pushed away the goddess sitting in his arms in an instant and stood up, his eyes filled with thunder. As soon as he waved his hand, several goddesses suddenly retreated in fear. A moment later, Zeus had a solemn expression on his face and muttered, "Strange, the underworld is shaking. Hades, after 3,000 years of silence, can't you bear the loneliness?" In the next second, Zeus condensed a huge lightning bolt in both hands, and threw it forcefully into the Eye of Doom in the sky. In an instant, dense thunder and lightning were like spider webs, winding and twisting along the clouds and spreading around. At this moment, all the gods in the divine realm looked up at the same time, and then turned into streamers and flew towards the central mount of Olympus. The god king is calling. A few minutes later, Zeus was seated on the throne inside the temple. Below are Demeter, Athena, Apollo, Hermes, and other gods with priesthoods. Even Ares, the god of war, is included. Yes, 80 years ago he did not die at all, but returned to Olympus after a defeat. The gods, unless they lose their godhead, or their godhead is broken, otherwise they wouldn't have died. Seeing that the people had arrived, Zeus looked at a goddess and said, "Persephone, it's time to start." Hearing this, a goddess stood up. She bowed slightly, then gently blew a mouthful of white mist forward, and then turned into a huge mirror floating in the air. As the queen of the underworld, Persephone has the ability to illuminate the underworld. Similarly, it was her defection that made Hades completely lose the god war. The next moment, with the infusion of divine power, pictures began to appear in the mirror. The gods looked at each other, because what appeared was not a picture of the underworld, but an endless sea of fire. But as we all know, flames do not exist in the underworld. Is it a mistake in strength, sister? The god of beauty, Aphrodite, seemed very concerned and asked. The queen glanced at the other party coldly, and then bowed his head slightly to Zeus. God King, the picture reflected in the mirror is indeed where the underworld temple is located. The breath of death does not lie. Hearing the accurate news, all the gods suddenly changed their faces. This is obviously something wrong in the underworld. Not good news. Zeus was suddenly upset in his heart, and endured his anger, and spoke out. For the safety of the Olympus god realm, who is willing to go to the underworld to investigate. As soon as these words came out, all the gods were silent, and none of them went to see Zeus. At this time, going to the underworld, no matter how you look at it, it is like looking for death. Zeus's face turned cold, and anger appeared in his eyes. But at this moment, Hercules stood up and said with a solemn expression, "God King, I wish not to please Zeus. As a mortal who becomes a god after death, he possesses impeccable qualities and is willing to take risks." But before he finished speaking, he saw the flames in the mirror suddenly condense into a round of miniature sun. Immediately afterwards, countless terrifying lightning bolts that made people palpitate just by looking at it were born out of nowhere, constantly crashing into the sun, and faintly there was a sound of screaming. Hercules' voice was stuck in his throat at once, and finally, the words "willing to go to the underworld" could not be spoken. He is willing to take risks, but he is not willing to die directly. In the current picture, whether it is condensed flames or silver white lightning, it makes him smell death. And that lightning is even more powerful than Zeus' godhead. Zeus could also see it, and his expression suddenly became extremely ugly. At this time, there was a change in the picture again. As if stimulated, black ripples appeared in the miniature sun, and it seemed that some terrifying power was awakening inside. Hades, the sun god Apollo, couldn't help but shout. The god suddenly showed shock. They had thought that Hades had caused this change. But right now, there's a scary message. That is Hades, the god of the underworld, is under attack. And this black ripple performance, Hades is obviously in a desperate situation, and is frantically bursting out the power of the godhead. But Zeus is here, and who can force Hades to this point? Suddenly, a voice with laughter appeared in the mirror. All prey will die when they fall into the trap, but you and I both know that it is just a waste of effort. And now, Hades, you are no different from your prey. This voice is obviously very flat, but it falls on the hearts of the gods like a cold wind. Some low-level gods can even feel their souls trembling. The next moment, a figure slowly descended from the sky and came to the miniature sun that had begun to appear a large number of black cracks. He raised his hand slightly, and suddenly a circle of mysterious magic arrays superimposed on the entire arm rotated. In an instant, a terrifying feeling that made the gods' hearts palpitate emanated from the mirror, and with that figure, gently shake the palm. In an instant, more than a dozen weak gods couldn't help but exclaim, covering their chests and breathing heavily. Just now, they felt their hearts obviously skip a beat, as if they were going to die. And the picture in the mirror is even more terrifying. An incomparably clear scream came from the miniature sun, and the steadily diffused black ripples that had previously originated from the Hades godhead suddenly erupted in disorder. Then it went completely silent less than a second later. At this time, the thunder stopped, the miniature sun gradually dispersed, and a figure fell powerlessly to the ground. The pale-faced gods once again showed their eyes in disbelief. I saw Hades, the god of the underworld, with a blue and gray face, lying on the ground like a tattered doll. A pitch-black void exploded from the chest, and the heart inside had disappeared, leaving only broken blood vessels at the edges. Moreover, there is no flesh and blood rebirth, as if some force is stopping it. At this moment, all the gods can see it. If it weren't for the support of the godhead, Hades would have died long ago and couldn't die anymore. Where did this terrible existence come from? The gods were apprehensive and looked at Zeus on the throne. Zeus was also in a stirring mood at this moment, because even he didn't force Hades to this point. Moreover, he didn't know who the other party was. And at this moment, the picture in the mirror changed. I saw several black balls falling from the hands of mysterious figures. They wrapped Hades' limbs, and then, like dragging prey, dragged each other to the sky again. At this time, the gods saw the other party take out a strange weapon from the void and aim it at Hades' head. Ares, the god of war, had been to the world and immediately said the information that this was a weapon. Helmerston, the god of speed, showed an incredulous gaze and spoke. It wouldn't be trying to kill Hades, would it? As soon as these words were spoken, other gods immediately refuted them. Impossible, no one in the underworld can do it. Yes, he's too arrogant. What's more, how can human weapons do it? Although the gods were shocked by the strength of the other party, they would never recognize that the other party could kill Hades. You must know that if Poseidon had not left his own sea, then it would not have fallen. This is also the reliance of the gods. As long as you don't leave the god realm, you can be resurrected with the godhead. Zeus felt the same, but a strong uneasiness appeared in his heart. The next moment, all the gods saw that figure raise the revolver and blow the hammer on it. But when he raised his muzzle again, he pulled the trigger without hesitation. In an instant, flames burst out from the muzzle, and a scarlet bullet fell into Hades' head. Bang! All the god bodies couldn't help but tremble at the same time, because it was not a gunshot, but the sound of Hades' head shattering into blood. At the same moment, all the ordinary people in the Olympian god realm looked at the sky in confusion, as if something was happening in the underworld, and as gods, after many years, they once again felt that feeling of horror from fate. Hades is truly dead, like Poseidon of those years. And the next moment, a more terrifying picture appeared. In the mirror, the figure actually slowly turned around, and then looked up slightly. That terrifying gaze seemed to penetrate the mirror at this moment, appeared in the temple, and was watching. In a flash, the gods are silent. Episode 143. Zeus's face changed, and although he was in disbelief, he immediately decided. Persephone, remove the mirror of reflection. He can really see here. The gods were in an uproar, and the queen quickly withdrew the divine power. Seeing this, Zeus breathed a sigh of relief. The passages of the Olympian god realm and the underworld have long been closed. Although I don't know how the other party got to the underworld, there is definitely no way to come to the god realm. but just then, a chuckle echoed inside the temple. Friendly reminder, next time don't play voyeurism in front of a space master, you will be discovered. The sound fell, and a certain space in the temple was as chaotic as a Rubik's cube, and dozens of blocks from other spaces appeared. When the spatial shift was restored again, a figure carrying something suddenly appeared, as if it had been there. Thump, the sound of falling sounds. It was Hades' shattered body, falling in the middle of the temple. The gods suddenly retreated in panic, their faces full of fear. If the other party can kill Hades, then you can kill them too. Especially the black gem played within the other party's hand, that is Hades' godhead, and now it has also been taken out by the other party. There was silence inside the temple. Zeus knew that he couldn't go on like this, and if he really fought, the low morale would definitely tilt the scales completely. In an instant, his eyes were full of electricity. Bang! A violent and shocking sudden thunder sounded, and countless arcs of electricity traveled on the walls and stone pillars of the hall. This moment belongs to the coercion of the king of the 12 main gods. Compared with the previous anxiety, this time the gods seemed to have found the heart of the Lord. But the next moment, an even more terrifying aura descended. It was an unspeakable horror, with solemnity, with judgment, silence with all kinds of elements, with death and sacredness. Wave. A shattered sound sounded, and Zeus's thunder power ceased to exist. And at this time, the figure spoke again. I don't like the environment. As the sound fell, the sound of shattering sounded, and the space seemed to be fragmented and began to rapidly deform, swim, and reorganize. But a few seconds later, the entire temple of Zeus had disappeared. In its place is a huge disc platform, surrounded by a vast deep space without any roads, with various nebulae circulating. At this moment, the gods were a little in a trance, and they didn't even know if they were still in the Olympian god realm. Woohoo! Suddenly, the sound of struggle sounded. The gods suddenly woke up from the shock, and then saw a terrifying scene. I saw Hermes, the god of speed, being strangled by that terrifying figure. His face was red, his legs were kicking, and his eyes were bloodshot and scared. This moment is like a beast strangled by the neck, completely unable to break free. Russell ignored the gaze of the gods and said with a look of disgust, "You said that everyone stays where they are, and you don't want to run away as long as you want. Is this appropriate?" And run away, it turns out to be a waste? Just when he used the mirror space, the other party did not hesitate to escape, but he instantly caught up. At this time, the gods immediately understood when they heard the words, and many of them showed anger. At this critical moment, if we cannot unite and fight together, wouldn't we have even less chance of victory? Zeus's heart was even more furious, finally determined why Shinsuli gave up his son back then. But the other party is his own child after all. Zeus did not strike in a panic, but spoke in a deep voice. "Your Excellency, since you didn't start a war as soon as you appeared, there must be something else to do, right? Please put down Hermes, maybe we can talk." Russell didn't even look at Zeus, squinting slightly at the god of speed with a painful look in front of him. "Sure enough, you are Hermes. And I remember that Hippolyta said that you did not participate in that battle back then. Since you have not changed your death for so many years, and you give up your immediate companionship when you encounter danger, then, please die." Hearing this, Zeus's body suddenly became extremely dazzling, and with the sound of explosion, it turned into a bolt of lightning and roared towards Russell. But at this moment, the whole space trembled. An extremely terrifying gravitational pull is generated from below, as if a black hole has descended. And this is not the end. A bright light suddenly lights up from above. An incomparably complex magic array appeared at an unknown time, erupting into a terrifying fiery shock. Then, after passing through a new magic array again, it became more explosive and bombarded. Space weakness change, plus deadly gravity, plus superpower skyfall, plus high-order magic buff. In an instant, the lightning that Zeus turned into had to instantly change back to its original body, and his hands held up the lightning shield to resist. And the other gods are not so easy at all. Under the huge gravity and impact, they made it extremely difficult to defend. Their knees slowly bent, and finally they had to kneel half-kneel. And those who have been crushed to the ground from God have been crushed to death. Cracks and terrible wounds slowly appeared on the body and epidermis, and a painful scream came out of the mouth. Just when a god is about to hold on and is about to be killed, all attacks disappeared without a trace in an instant. The gods suddenly felt everything on their bodies, and their hearts suddenly gave birth to a sense of happiness for the rest of their lives after the disaster. Survived. Click. Suddenly, a crisp cracking sound sounded, lifting the hearts of the gods high again. Everyone watched in horror as the god of speed weakly drooped down his limbs. Another god has fallen. Russell casually threw away Hermes' body, glanced at Zeus with a gloomy face without care, and looked around at the gods. "Maybe you don't understand it yet, but I'm not here to discuss with you this time." Zeus responded angrily. "If I'm not mistaken, you don't seem to have told us what to do, so you shot for no reason." As a god king, he had never felt so humiliated. But the other party can kill Hades with ease, plus the means just now are destined to show. The outcome of the battle to the death is likely to be the gods fight to the death, and the other side is just a fight. Therefore, under the fate of the life and death of the Olympian gods, he must endure. Russell blinked his eyes and said with a look of surprise, "Huh? didn't I say that? Of course he knew he hadn't said it, because he did it on purpose. Punish someone as a warning to others. This group of Olympian gods has been at ease for too long, and the thunder means will weaken their resistance heart. The next thing will be much easier. Episode 144. Looking at the Olympian gods with fear in most of their eyes, Russell knew that the time was ripe. But some things are not convincing to say, but there is one person who can. In the next second, with a soft snap of fingers, a gate made of golden lines slowly opened. Hippolyta and Diana came out of the door. The latter looked curiously at the gods around him, who appeared only in the stories told by his mother. I immediately found that they did not seem to be high-minded, nor did they have a so-called noble temperament. Very average. However, it was beyond her expectations that Ares was still alive, and Hippolyta is completely different. She looked at the expressions of the gods with disbelief, but she knew how proud these gods were, especially when he saw the grumpy Zeus standing in place with an ugly face. It was even more incredible. This is a picture she never dared to dream about, but Russell did. Hippolyta was in a trance in his heart, but he didn't expect that the other party really succeeded in shocking all the gods alone. She suddenly felt that there were still a lot of reservations about what the other party said on Paradise Island before. This kind of strength is simply beyond her imagination. Similarly, Diana also understood at this time, and her heartbeat suddenly accelerated violently. And looking at the expressions of the gods, the awe that still existed in her heart before completely disappeared. The so-called gods do not seem to be much different from mortals. Take a deep breath. Hippolyta took her daughter without looking at the gods, walked to Russell, and nodded. If it were in the old days, this behavior will definitely anger the gods. In their eyes, the other party was nothing more than a race created to protect the divine realm and could be reprimanded at will. It turned out to be so impudent. But this time, no god dared to speak. Some even lowered their heads, afraid that the other party would notice their past revenge. Hippolyta looked at this group of so-called gods with a disdainful sneer, and then looked at Zeus. Your peaceful days of drunken dreams are coming to an end, Zeus. Zeus naturally heard the resentment and dissatisfaction in this sentence, and thought that the other party was for the things of the year, so he immediately explained. I also had no choice. Someone needed to lead the Guardian Mother box. Only the Amazon warriors under your command were the most suitable. I hope you understand my distress. If it was in the past, of course he would not, and he would not bother to explain. But now seeing his daughter clinging to that terrifying human being, he felt that it was better to start from the heart. At the same time, he was also a little unhappy in his heart. Is such a big thing to get to where it is now? And one of his own children died because of it. Of course, he has hundreds of children, otherwise he would not be able to bear it now. Hippolyta snorted coldly, looked at Zeus in disgust, and mocked. You think I'm because of such a trifle? I also want to thank you for letting me go, and I'm afraid that I was killed by Hera a long time ago. Hera, the queen of heaven standing not far away, quickly shrunk back, for fear of getting into trouble. However, Zeus was not stupid, and suddenly a bad feeling appeared in his heart. What is that for? Zeus asked with a frown. Hippolyta said coldly. The mother box has awakened. The Dark Lord Darkseid is about to make a comeback. Do you think you can hide here? At this moment, not only Zeus, but also the other gods turned pale. Darkseid's brutality they had seen back then. The Green Lantern Guardians from the universe had shown them the worlds conquered by darkness. In addition to surrendering to slavery, the only option left is death, without exception. Otherwise, how could all races unite back then? Is it by love? That's hilarious, too. Can you be sure of the facts? Zeus asked, still struggling for a moment. Instead of answering, Hippolyta took a step back. The next moment, plop, a scorched black corpse wearing thorny armor fell from the air. Even if it has been completely lost, it still exudes a powerful aura. It's a pity that the vanguard of the enemy has actually arrived, Russell said calmly, and then casually lightly clicked in the air, and suddenly the space rippled. Then the war that took place on Paradise Island not long ago began to broadcast in the air, and when the picture of the mother box summoning Steppenwolf appears, the gods have no luck. Similarly, the scene where Russell almost killed Steppenwolf with one punch also made their eyes even more terrifying. Zeus was even more of a strong fluke in his heart. His strength is a little stronger than Steppenwolf, and even if the opponent's tomahawk has strange abilities or is extremely separated, then the victory or defeat is unknown. If you really choose to fight desperately just now, then at this time it should be a corpse in one place. At the same time, Zeus also breathed a sigh of relief. So you want to unite all races against Darkseid, like the former Green Light Guardians? Rest assured, we Olympus will not stand idly by. He was not perfunctory, and he was even in favor of it. It's just a pity that Hermes, if you don't run away, you won't die at all. But at this moment, Zeus saw the other party stretch out his finger and shake it. Russell took a step forward and looked around at the gods. I think you may have misunderstood me. My purpose is not to put the battlefield on Earth, nor do I have the habit of waiting for the enemy to hit the door. Zeus's face turned pale. What are you going to do? At this moment, he didn't even dare to think about it. I'm going to do it. Of course it is. destroy the apocalypse and kill Darkseid, with a grand, sacred and inviolable majestic voice sounded. Russell did not hesitate to release all his breath at this moment, and the violent and terrifying magic power erupted as if it were the end of the world, forming a monstrous tsunami that flooded everyone. Space is crumbling. A terrifying dragon groan that seemed to come from ancient times sounded, shocking the soul. In an instant, except for Hippolyta and Diana, all the gods' bodies couldn't help but tremble. This moment, in their eyes, everything around quickly receded and disappeared, leaving only darkness. I have become incomparably small, and Russell's body was like a demon god enlarged to tens of thousands of meters. He has 3 pairs of huge wings on his back. Thunder flames on the golden armor surround the body. 12 different powers surround you like a divine ring. Throbbing, fear, death. The breath of terror is like hell. At this moment, their so-called divine identity suddenly became extremely ridiculous. It's like an ant, as if it will be trampled to death at any time. In an instant, they finally understood. It turns out that in front of the other party, he is immortal. In the next second, a huge voice full of majesty echoed in the hearts of the gods. Choose now. Is it to counterattack the apocalypse star with me, or imprisoned by me for 10,000 years? Episode 145. Bright sunshine, golden sand. The monsoon breeze of the Pacific Ocean gently brushes the face. On Paradise Island, Russell comfortably holds a lazy long-legged Amazon princess, basking in the sun. The trip to the Olympus divine realm went very smoothly. Under the crushing of the corpses of Hades and Hermes, the god of speed, as well as absolute strength, the gods first strongly condemned Darkseid's immoral behavior with sharp words. Then make it clear that it is incumbent upon you to protect the earth and will definitely contribute your strength on the road to eliminating evil. Of course, when signing the unbreakable vow, there are still small twists and turns. But fortunately, after the god of beauty and love were imprisoned in the deepest part of the underworld like a pig's head, everyone immediately signed up very happily and very harmoniously. As for whether the god of beauty and the god of love will be beautiful when they come out in 10,000 years, whether anyone remembers, no god cares. After all, everyone is really not familiar. After a full week of rest, Russell planned to say goodbye to Diana. After all, he had other things to do, and he couldn't go on like this. And then, May 3rd, bask in the sun with long legs. On the 4th of May, play games with long legs in the hot springs. On the 5th of May, it rained, so I had to hide from the rain in the palace with my long legs. May 6th, bask in the sun. That night, Russell made up his mind and left tomorrow. On the 7th of May, the big long legs said that I was useless little garbage. Where can I endure this? I won't leave today. May 8th, bask in the sun. On June 8th, the long legs were driven away by the queen's righteous annihilation. The sun is not so bright, the sea breeze is too salty, and the Paradise Island is not interesting. It is better to leave. That day, one returned to the metropolis and the other headed for the Atlantic. Reykjavik City. In a 5-star hotel, Russell casually made an enchantment and then took out the mother box. This is what he took secretly. First, the other party can't protect it, and if the mother box is summoned again, there will be an accident. Second, he came for this thing. Of course he had to take it. Of course, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he left a fake on Paradise Island. After fiddling for a while, Russell showed a surprised look. He sensed that there was an extremely terrifying energy inside. That is to say, even if he can't find a way to use this thing, returning to Marvel to feed the dimension and grow hard is the best. One mother box is enough to top dozens of Olympus, the god of Agi, who was killed before. As for the other 2 mother boxes, one in Atlantis and one in the laboratory in the United States, they are relatively easy to obtain. This time, the DC trip has already made a lot of money with this artifact alone. Retract the mother box and Russell turn on the system. I'm tired of being with Diana these days, and he has no chance to simulate it. At this time, when I opened the board, I immediately saw the trip to the Olympus god realm, and I gained a total of 11,800 points. I don't know if the god of the underworld has a key plot, or if some other god is more important for the future. System, start the simulation. The next moment, the exchange point is consumed like water, and the simulation of Saja has also increased from 8.2% to 31.8%. You have obtained 23.6% of the physical fitness of the character template. You get 23.6% of the mini-universe. You get a space warp. Twist the space to bounce off your opponent's attack. You have obtained the divine determination technique. Different from the body-fixing technique, it is a magical ability that seals the opponent's soul so that the enemy cannot use any power to escape. You have obtained teleportation. You have opened the knowledge at the end of the 7th sense. Time sense. You have received the Virgo Golden Holy Robe. Defense increased by 100%, strength increased by 100%, speed increased by 100% after wearing. At this moment, as the power loads, Russell no longer doubts that Saga can reach the Heavenly Father level, because just 30% of the strength has already broken through that boundary, and once it is 100%, it must be the best in the Heavenly Father level. Of course, what excites Russell the most is the attribute of the Golden Holy Robe, because his strength and speed are not only those of Saga, and the ox charm and rabbit charm under full urging are already extremely terrifying. Now that the golden holy robe has doubled, it will increase to an incredible level. Without hesitation, Russell's body suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it had teleported and arrived on an uninhabited planet. Here is Mars. Russell closed his eyes slightly, and the next second, his body bloomed with golden light. That's the light used by the little universe. The next moment, the void began to tremble. The Virgo galaxy seems to have descended across borders, outlining an indescribable nebula scene in the sky. Grand. Dream. Magnificent. An ethereal female voice sighed and suddenly appeared. More than a dozen gold parts condensed from the nebula, and then fell on Russell with a swaying golden yellow trajectory. When the Virgo gold robe fits perfectly, in an instant, a terrifying aura descended. Russell slowly raised his left hand and clenched his fist. The power of itself, the power of the bull charm began to slowly accumulate. When the surrounding space actually began to tremble, as if it could not bear it, a golden meteor slammed into the ground. In a flash, in the silent and eternal universe, there is a supernova-like explosion, and that light actually exceeds the speed of light in the physical sense. Illuminate the entire solar system in an instant. After a dozen seconds, the light dissipated. Originally, the location of Mars was nothing but a lot of dust. One punch, smash the stars. In the deep space of the universe, Russell looked at his fist and showed an extremely surprised gaze. Although when he becomes a heavenly father, he can destroy the planet, but it's completely different in front of you. Mars is not shattered, but turned into powder. And the punch just now is obviously more than that, but Mars can only withstand such a degree. Russell suddenly felt like he could change his plans. He originally planned to return to the Marvel world after obtaining 3 mother boxes, but now it seems, if you push Saga's template to 100% in DC, you can attack Apocalypse earlier. Flexible magic, various enhanced buffs, powerful flesh, and the gold investment of Virgo. He didn't have any weaknesses at all, and he was definitely the part of existence that was at the peak of the Heavenly Father level. Russell absolutely does not believe that Darkseid can reach a monolithic universe without an anti-life equation, the most accidental. He also has a meteor ring that can resist negative effects and make wishes. In the next second, with a movement of his mind, he returned to the room again. Russell looked out the window. A few kilometers away is the junction of the Atlantic Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. As far as he knows, Atlantis is in this sea. I have heaven will. A black woman clicked on the SSS level document that had just arrived. The next moment, a video starts playing. It was a cosmic scene in the eye of the giant space telescope, with a planet in the center of the frame, but just after 0.1 seconds, a burst of bright light burst out. Then the video is clearly processed, and the light quickly dims and becomes another non-visible spectrum. In an instant, Amanda Waller stood up in shock. She couldn't believe what she saw. Mars exploded into powder without warning. What's going on? Amanda immediately questioned into the headphones. Suddenly, a hoarse voice came from inside. Don't worry, supervisor, keep watching. At this point, the screen continues to change, and it begins to expand rapidly, and AI repairs are carried out. A dozen seconds later, Amanda's body froze suddenly, and then sat weakly on the chair, looking at the screen with a miserable face. At this moment, she felt that her worldview was shattered. I saw a blurry golden humanoid creature standing proudly in its original position on Mars. God, you're definitely kidding me, Amanda muttered to herself with a dull look. But there was a thunderbolt in the earphones. Supervisor, although I don't want to say it, but the spectrum just now said, the light that bursts out of that power comes from this person. That is, this will be an existence that can easily destroy the Earth. Episode 146. In a remote town in Iceland, a traveler walks into a tavern. The local area makes a living from fishing, and strangers are not common, and suddenly many muscular men look up. However, after discovering that it was just a thin young man, he obviously lost his guard. This kind of foreigner can even beat 10 girls in the village. At this time, a voice came from the back of the bar. Have a Coke. There was a second of silence in the tavern, and then thunderous laughter. But the sound of laughter and laughter disappeared and turned into a whining sound of fear. I saw that in the entire bar, everyone's mouths except the bartender disappeared. The next second, these drunkards scrambled to overturn their seats and ran out of the tavern with a look of horror. Seeing that the world was quiet, Russell smiled again and said to the bartender in front of him, "Remember to add ice, thanks." The bartender, who witnessed everything, did not dare to run away at all. Trembling, he poured the whiskey cola into a cup, then filled it with ice cubes, and carefully served it to the other party. Russell took a sharp sip, then let out a long burp. Drinks and everything is heresy, and sure enough, ice cola is delicious. After a while, seeing that the bartender was about to faint, Russell signaled the other party to leave, and he continued to wait alone. More than an hour later, a man with a tattoo pushed open the door of the bar and then did the same. After taking a sip of the bottle of wine casually, he said casually as if chatting with an old friend, "When I was a kid, I also liked to drink Coke, but it was Pepsi." Russell shook his head regretfully. That's a shame, we can't be friends. Hearing this, Arthur almost spewed out all his beer. He was supposed to solve the trouble. It's just that the villager's mouth has been automatically ready, so he wants to send the stranger away peacefully. As for friends, who wants to be friends with a wizard who likes to talk to Coke? It's even weirder than a fish talking. And Coca-Cola is really unpalatable, like syrup. He doesn't like it. The next second, do you want to save your mother? Russell didn't lift his head. Brother, in fact, Coca-Cola is my favorite. Alcohol is not good at all, except hurting the body. Arthur threw away the beer, flipped into the counter and directly showed off 3 bottles of Coke, and then gave a thumbs up. Sincerity. Russell was not surprised by Aquaman's teasing behavior. This product is not very smart, and it is estimated that the sea water has long been poured into the brain. But there was no way, he still had to find the other party. Atlantis, like Paradise Island, has a divine enchantment. Although finding a needle in a haystack can also be found, it is too troublesome. It's better to let Aquaman Arthur lead the way. The other party helped Maylaw when Steppenwolf seized the mother box, and obviously knew the location. And Arthur happily agreed after hearing the request. Although he didn't understand what the guarded box was for, he didn't care. A broken box in exchange for his own mother is simply worth it. And the main reason is that he still has a lot of dislike for Atlanteans. When are we leaving? Arthur asked excitedly. Russell did not get up from his seat, but raised his hand. Put your hands up. Arthur looked embarrassed, and at this moment he suddenly wondered if the other party was a tricky zero. The behavior is too suspicious. However, thinking that his mother was still suffering in Atlantis, he gritted his teeth and put it up. After quickly flipping through the memory, Russell nodded with satisfaction. Not bad, save me from beating you and doing it myself. Arthur looked confused and didn't know what he meant. But in the next second, I suddenly felt that the sky was spinning. When the vision was clear again, I was shocked to find that I had come to the bottom of the sea. Huge stone pillars arch all around, and the mysterious box is placed on the central altar. #UN%. Arthur spoke excitedly. He wanted to ask the other party how he did it, but forgot that he was in the sea, and suddenly drank a belly of salty water. Although Russell is in the sea here, the surrounding sea water automatically separates more than 10 centimeters, as if flying on land makes no difference. He went directly to the altar and took the second mother box. At this time, the guards around had already discovered and surrounded them with weapons in hand. Arthur looked nervous, ready to resist at any time, but the next moment, when he saw that strangeness, he only glanced at it faintly, and a dozen guards instantly petrified and fell to the bottom of the sea. Arthur couldn't contain his horror, and he only felt extremely strange. But at this time a faint voice sounded in the bottom of his heart. It will be lifted in 10 minutes, don't worry. #Yanet, I see. Excited, Arthur took another sip of seawater. Seeing this scene, Russell suddenly felt that the previous plan was a little unreliable. He originally planned to let Aquaman succeed him as King of Atlantis, and then also participate in the plan to attack the Apocalypse. But when you think of Bruce, it doesn't matter. At that time, all the fighters will obey Batman's command. In the next second, Russell took Arthur's shoulder and teleported directly into the depths of the Mariana Trench. New fluctuations in high-pressure seawater. There seems to be a new frenzy in the dark. Although Arthur couldn't see anything, the alarm bell in his heart shook. But at this moment, he saw green lightning burst out from Russell's fingers, turning into countless tiny branches and spreading out. At this moment, under the light of light, Arthur finally knew what to perceive danger. I saw countless hideous and terrifying monsters surging up from the bottom of the sea and enveloping towards me. At a glance, it is extremely bloodthirsty and evil. In an instant, Arthur felt dead. There are monsters on all sides, and there is no chance to run. But immediately he showed an incredibly shocked look again. I saw that all the monsters couldn't even struggle after being hit by green lightning, and immediately stiffened and died instantly. In just a second, millions of monsters were all spared, piling up a thick layer on the bottom of the sea. Arthur finally became apprehensive at this time. He was a little afraid that the other party would kill him here, and he didn't know it. As for resisting or something, he felt as if he was not qualified. Russell didn't know that the silly fish next to him was scaring himself, and quickly found the passage by following his perception. Then teleportation kicks in and takes Arthur to a beach. Not surprisingly, Atlanta is here. Arthur, who feels like he has entered hell one second, and in heaven the next. The mother and son recognized each other and cried. Crying and crying, Atlanta realized that something was wrong. Where was the wizard who brought her son? He went to the cave over there. Arthur pointed behind his mother. Atlanta's face suddenly changed, and she looked anxious. It's bad, there is the supergiant sea monster Karasun left by Poseidon. The strength is extremely strong. No one can survive in the mouth of that monster. He's only been gone for a short time, maybe you can stop him. The two immediately ran towards the cave, but just as he was about to enter, Russell came out of it. He looked at the two nervous and asked strangely, "How? Is there something going on?" Seeing that Russell was not dead, Arthur suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. "We thought you went into the pit under the cave, but it's good that you didn't, otherwise it would be dangerous." Russell blinked and said, "I'm in." Atlanta frowned. "In? Then you didn't meet Callison. Is that the giant sea monster hundreds of meters away?" "Yes. Russell nodded. Hearing this, Atlanta was suddenly shocked and said, Kara's son is so violent that he didn't eat you. Russell scratched his head and said, that must be you misremembering, it's friendly. As soon as I entered, it knelt down, and then shoved the trident into my hand with tentacles, and I couldn't take it without it, it was so enthusiastic. Atlanta didn't believe it. She thought about it and walked into the cave. In the next second, a cautious voice echoed in Atlanta's ears. Little girl run, that man slaughtered Hades. As Poseidon's pet, he has certain special abilities that can detect whether a visitor is eligible to receive the sea trident. So, it activated its ability, and then vaguely saw the picture of the other party shooting Hades. I was almost scared to death. And on this side, even the origin of Atlanta was like a lightning strike for a moment. Kansas. After dealing with Atlantis affairs, Russell came to a place called the small town of Smowell. Soon after, Russell arrived at a farm under the guidance of enthusiastic locals. Toot toot. Russell knocked on the door of the master's room. A few seconds later, a couple in their 50s walked out of it. After discovering that it was a stranger, the man asked with a wary look, hello, is there something going on? Russell said with a kind smile, hello, is it Kent's? Yes, I'm Kent. The man nodded. Then you can't go wrong, Russell asked with a smile. Is Clark Kent at home? I'm his netizen. I happened to pass by this time to come and see him. He senses that Superman is not at home, but since old Kent is still alive, it is not yet the plot of the other parties travel around the world. At this point, Clark should be in high school or doing odd jobs nearby, but the next second, Russell saw the Kents with strange expressions. Jonathan Kent shrugged. This gentleman, I think you must have found the wrong person. We never had a man named Clark in our family, sorry. Russell's face changed, because he clearly perceives the other party. Didn't lie. Episode 147. How could there be no Clark? Russell clearly remembers all the plots about Superman, and this time he did not switch worlds like after meeting Lucifer. This is the DCU universe. Suddenly, the sound of the host broadcasting the news came from the TV in the living room of the house. This is the Metropolitan NCC TV. Urgently insert a piece of news. The red sun from Su Lian has just crossed the borderline to the Arctic and entered China's scientific experiment zone. Our reporter Louis Lane has set off with the Ministry of Defense. Please wait for the follow-up report. Brainwashed monsters, I don't know what to do this time. Kent shook his head and sighed. Mrs. Kent pulled her husband. This kind of thing is not something that small people like us can discuss, and we see that it is not true. Kent, who was almost 50 years old, nodded. Also, it's just that watching him become a weapon makes me feel very uncomfortable. Makes you laugh, sir. Saying that, he also smiled embarrassedly at the stranger in front of him. Of course not. Have a great day. Russell politely greeted the Kents and left the farm. The next moment, his figure disappeared instantly, and when he appeared again, he had already arrived in a world covered in snow and ice. High in the sky, he clearly saw a man wearing a red cape, but the mark on his chest no longer represented hope, Al-Jahwe, rather, a sickle and a hammer. Russell frowned. The world went wrong. Superman's spaceship did not crash in the cornfield of the Kent family, but landed in Su Lian. But shouldn't this be in some comic book story, why the DCU universe appears? And most importantly, this is clearly a timeline change. The red sun has appeared in other people's worldviews for a long time, but he has not been affected, and his memory is the previous world. At this time, a line of sight came over. Russell didn't care, because he hadn't hidden himself. With a roar, Superman flew in front of him in the blink of an eye. After an emergency stop, Superman said coldly in a tone with a flicked tongue, "Who are you?" Russell frowned. This was still a little wrong with what he thought before. The Red Sun in the comics is called the Super Virgin, an absolutely good person. But there is something wrong with the state of the Superman in front of him, and his eyes are full of anger. Seeing and not replying, Superman's eyes became more and more red. Limit you to 10 seconds to leave, or die. He had just learned with his super hearing that a huge ancient spaceship was here, and the isotope said that the material of the spacecraft he landed on Earth is exactly the same. He doesn't allow anyone to hit the idea here. Hearing this, a smile appeared on Russell's face. I haven't heard this in a long time. Why don't I count down for you? 1. The atmosphere fell silent for a second, and Superman seemed unable to believe what he heard. In the next second, a look of rage instantly appeared on his face. Find death. In an instant, Superman shook the air and slammed a punch into Russell's chest, with a violent tremor. 0.01 seconds later, a terrifying shockwave erupted from the sky and swept in all directions. The faces of Lewis and the military below, who are broadcasting the interview live, have changed drastically, then lie on the ground without hesitation. But it was too late, and everyone had not yet had time to make a move, as if caught in a violent tornado. And the tin room around, debris, and some lighter equipment were all blown off. After the chaos, the people who were still alive looked up at the sky and suddenly showed terrified eyes. I saw Superman being strangled by the neck of that stranger. How is that possible? God, I must be dreaming. A soldier knelt on the ground. Unbelievable that someone could resist that nightmare. Louis Lane was also lucky to escape, frantically flipping through his mobile phone, wanting to record this scene. At this moment, she saw a scene of scalp numbness. A golden ray burst out from that mysterious man's eye, and then instantly penetrated Superman's eye. Suddenly, a harsh scream appeared from the latter's mouth. Superman begins to struggle like a dying grasshopper. No matter how he resisted to reach out and attack, the strangled body could not move at all. As the struggle grew weaker, the screams became lower and lower. In the next second, Superman's limbs suddenly drooped, and his head was tilted to the side. Then it was discarded like a garbage, falling powerlessly on the ice like a ragged puppet without breath. The entire Arctic base fell into dead silence. No one believed that Superman was suddenly killed. It's like an ant on the side of the road, trampled to death at will. Everyone looked up, and looking at the floating figure at this time was like seeing a god. Russell doesn't care what the people below think, and he doesn't regret killing Superman. An evil Superman kills him without any psychological burden. As for why the world line suddenly changed, he did not plan to decrypt it for the time being. Although the plan is different from the original, it is not bad. The next moment, Russell's mind moved, and a terrifying thought power burst out. I don't know how many years the ancient ice sheet trembled violently, giving birth to bottomless cracks. With a huge roar, a huge ice sheet the size of a dozen football fields and more than 100 meters thick was lifted. This scene stunned everyone present. This kind of power is even more outrageous than just now, and it makes no difference to say that it is a miracle. At this time, a huge black shadow flew out of the deep pit. It was a spaceship hundreds of meters long. Russell moved again, and the flames melted the ice sheet in the sky, and then flew into the spaceship. Although there is no central control key, but brute force cracking also did not bother him. His computing power is far more powerful than a supercomputer. After activating the ship in the next second, Russell enters instructions to check the coordinates of the phantom area used by the Kryptonians to imprison criminals, and the cosmic star map recorded in it. His purpose has always been General Zod, and the last remaining Kryptonians. These people will be the main force in attacking the heavenly apocalypse star. After completely memorizing all the information, Russell took off the ship and disappeared in an instant. Probably less than an hour later, Russell returned to Earth, but with no one with him. Something strange. There are no Kryptonians in the Phantom Zone. Could it be that because of Red Superman, the previous plot has also changed? After thinking about it, Russell teleported to Gotham. In the next second, he narrowed his eyes slightly. The Batcave in front of you still exists, and a Batman is inside. But that's not Bruce Wayne. Episode 148. Who are you? Inside the Batcave, a man with half-white sideburns, but still sharp eyes, picked up his weapon and asked, with a solemn face. The person in front of him appeared instantly, like a ghost. He didn't know if the bat dart was useful. Russell didn't care about the other party's nervousness, looked at the familiar and unfamiliar environment around him and asked, what about Bruce Wayne? The grief in the man's eyes flashed, and he suppressed his anger. Irritating a father with the past 30 years ago. Isn't your excellency's means dirty? Russell reacted instantly, and said with a slightly dull face, he's dead? Did you survive that year? Thomas Wayne's face showed surprise, and he clearly felt that the other party seemed to be a little surprised and unhappy with this result. But why is that? Russell didn't intend to spend it here, but just took a deep look at the other party and said, although it is unfortunate, just 12 hours ago, it was 36-year-old Bruce Wayne who was alive in this world. You died 28 years ago. Glancing at the lost old Wayne, Russell left directly. In the next second, he teleported away. Then Russell went to see Atlantis, Paradise Island, and the Olympian god realm. Discover that there are great changes. But Poseidon's Poseidon trident, 2 mother boxes, Steppenwolf and Hades' bodies are still in his hands. And in the history of the present, these things were either lost early or died long ago for some other reason. Russell guessed that this should be because he was not affected by the timeline. After thinking for a while, he disappeared again. Midtown. The world seemed to stand still, but a red lightning bolt was unaffected, speeding through every corner of the city. Barry Allen ran wantonly, only to feel that this extreme speed felt really amazing. Just half a month ago, he was struck by a bolt of lightning. He who thought he would die not only did not die, but also awakened the ability to rush. For a while, he even relied on this ability to save many people. This made him feel that his dark life brightened again. Barry ran more and more excited, watching the surrounding scenery being pulled back at a rapid pace, and had an indescribable sense of pleasure, and couldn't help but excited. My name is Barry Allen, and I'm the fastest man in the world right now. Swish! A golden figure instantly surpassed in front of his eyes, and disappeared around the corner of the street in a blink of an eye. The slap in the face came so suddenly. Barry's heart was like a shocking wave, but he didn't expect that there were other speeders besides himself. The next moment, he showed a surprised smile and chased after him excitedly like an era. This is a companion who can communicate. But just as he turned the corner with the fluctuation of the air, he saw a big forced fan over. Syllable. In an instant, Barry withdrew from the state of divine speed, and then after tumbling a few times, he simply fainted neatly. The world is noisy again. Russell slowly walked to Barry's side and walked in with the other's ankle towards the portal that appeared in front. I don't know how long it took. Barry woke up slowly. He didn't know where it was, and the darkness around him scared him a little, and he could clearly feel that he was tied to a chair. Syllable. The harsh light suddenly lit up, and Barry instinctively narrowed his eyes. The next moment, when his vision was clear, he found a yellow figure that appeared in front of him at an unknown time. Barry Allen, you have failed the city. Overlapping voices echoed through the room, like an angry police officer questioning a prisoner. Barry felt a little frightened looking at the blurry, constantly shaking figure in front of him, and said carefully, "This Mr. Yellow? I really don't know what happened. Did you recognize the wrong person?" And at this moment, the abnormality appeared again. A blue lightning bolt appeared instantly, knocking off the yellow-cloaked figure. Then after circling Barry, untie him and run with him. The new mysterious man quickly shouted as he ran. "Barry, I don't have time to explain the specifics to you. Now we run side by side together, and when the speed peaks, I'll give you a push. Remember, when the time wormhole appears, you must not hesitate to jump into it. The world depends on you to save it." Barry is completely blinded by this series of accidents, plus the man in yellow who knocked him down will soon catch up. He instinctively ran along, and the word "save the world," like a pair of hands pushing him, had to run. Soon, after just a few breaths, the speed has reached its limit. Ready? 1.2.3. In an instant, a huge force came from his back, and Barry suddenly felt that his speed exceeded the limit. And then, the brain reacts, but the legs say, "What are you doing?" Barry fell to the ground on a large horse and braked his chin. The blue figure stopped, and the yellow figure that had been shot off before also rushed to stand aside. But the two did not fight. It's really not Barry's changed timeline. His current speed difference is too much, and he can't travel through time with help. After saying a word, the two figures of one blue and one yellow stepped out face to face, and then merged into one person. Russell touched his chin and looked at Barry's back in deep thought. If it's not Godspeed, then who can change the timeline? And just then, an ancient bell rang in the city. Russell's face changed, and he saw Barry's body disappearing little by little when he fell into a coma not far away, including the long break print on the ground. 12 o'clock, why did it change at this point in time? The next moment, something even more unexpected happened. A golden lightning bolt passed by him. Moreover, the people among them were facing Russell's gaze and showing extremely shocked eyes. With the sound of a sharp break, a man in a yellow flash uniform stopped. The man walked up to Russell and said in an uncertain tone, "This gentleman, if you read me correctly, you seem to be able to see me just now?" Russell nodded. "If you mean you just ran like a bolt of lightning, I can see it." When the man heard this, he immediately showed joyful eyes, and then took off his hood and said, "Hello, my name is Wally West. Presumably you are also a speedster." In his theoretical research, only the speedster can stretch the timescale and see himself on the run. Wally? Isn't that 3 generations of Flash? Russell narrowed his eyes slightly and glanced at the other party, and then disappeared in an instant. Wally stood there dumbfounded. He instinctively thought that the other party was running away, and he couldn't understand that there was such a fast speed in the world. Bat Cave. Russell reappears, and then sees a man in a bat suit preparing to leave in a Batmobile. "Bruce Wayne?" Russell spoke. The Batmobile stopped, and a familiar deep voice came from inside. "Who are you?" Sure enough, not knowing me, Russell disappeared again without hesitation. This time he came to a farm in the small town of Smallville. Under his perception, Clark was sleeping in his room. Russell looked at the date on his phone. June 10th. That is, the bell at 12 o'clock is not a reset world. Instead, a new timeline change has happened again. Episode 149. In the sky, Russell did not go to Superman. Instead, he turned around and disappeared again and came to the headquarters of the Heavenly Eye Society. The timeline is too chaotic, and he is too lazy to do delicate work. Direct selection control. Amanda Waller found the location of the third mother box. It is currently housed in a military laboratory in Ohio. Then, without suspense, the third mother box arrived. Now no matter what, even if he can't solve the timeline problem, his return to Marvel with 3 mother boxes is a great gain. After doing this, Russell waited quietly. Sure enough, as soon as 12 o'clock arrived that night, the timeline was changed again. The fate of everyone except him has once again been changed. 1 day, 2 days. 7 days later, time moves forward, but the timeline changes every night. But Russell felt as if he had discovered a pattern. He intends to continue to wait and see. Finally, a month passed, and Russell could finally be sure. Superman has a problem. Intentionally or unintentionally, people like the Flash, Batman, Aquaman, and Hawkman, who he found to be constantly reincarnated, have completely disappeared. But only Superman, no matter how abnormal, exists every time. To prove this conclusion, Russell once again selectively kills an evil Superman and takes the other party's body into his dark kingdom. But when 12 midnight arrives, a new Superman still appears. You must know that the previous Steppenwolf and Hades, after being killed by him and left behind, the timeline change does not resurrect these two. But Superman can. Russell let out a long breath. Since you have found a key point, there may be a way to break the game. After thinking slightly for a while, a sneer appeared at the corner of Russell's mouth. Since you can return to Marvel at any time now, it is better to play a big one. But before that, he has one more thing to do. Museum of London. Russell smiled and walked behind a woman who was carving a marble figure. Sorry, sir, I don't like people being too close to me. The woman did not look back, but her voice was full of coldness. Russell sighed sadly. Hey, when we used to bask in the sun together, we called people good brothers. Now if you don't see you for a few days, call this gentleman. It's really merciless. Diana slowly turned around, a dangerous look flashing in her eyes. This gentleman, please leave immediately, otherwise I will call the security guard. But as soon as the words fell, she was shocked to find that the other party grabbed her waist in one step, but she couldn't dodge or struggle at all. So powerful. As soon as Diana's face changed, she was about to burst out with divine power, but the next moment, a pair of magical eyes were met. For a time, countless past pictures quickly reflected in her mind. After a few breaths, Diana suddenly shook, and when she looked up at Russell again, her eyes were full of fear and worry. What the hell is going on here, and why does the timeline change so often? And I didn't even notice it at all, which was terrible. She was extremely glad that Russell could not be affected at this time, otherwise this would really be no different from a disaster. I don't know why I disappeared innocently one day. You came to wake me up, is there a solution? Diana leaned into Russell's ear and whispered. Russell shook his head and nodded. Just an attempt. But to protect you from being affected, you still need to agree to one thing. Then Russell brought up his idea of letting Diana enter the kingdom of darkness. There, Diana would not be affected at all. At the same time, he is also to prevent that once the movement is too large, the world will be violently affected. After all, he doesn't know what the timeline will be like then. Diana's eyes were moved, knowing that Russell was worried about his accident. Without hesitation, she directly agreed to come down. As for her mother, Diana did not speak. It's not that she doesn't want to, but Hippolyta, as the queen of the Amazons, will not abandon her people to hide. For the rest of the day, the two stayed warm until almost 12 o'clock at midnight. After watching Diana plunge into darkness, Russell flew into the sky. When the bell rings again at 12, the world line changes again. Russell looked at the ground under his feet and showed a sneer after sensing that Diana was completely free of abnormalities in the Dark Kingdom. The next moment, he put on the Virgo golden, holy robe. 3 pairs of huge wings spread out behind them, and the fire of judgment burned in the eyes. Deliver your magic at full strength. Start chanting in your mouth. Magic, magic amplification, magic and mechanics, blessing of the magic bard, magic advanced lucky, magic radiant emerald green. Calm any fluctuations in the heart, magic and divine possession, magic and high-level all attribute enhancement. Magic perception amplification, magic and advanced enhanced resistance. Hundreds of buff magic were put on Russell's body. At the same time, a one-time substitute magic item exchanged by the Bone King is in the activation mode. The next moment, he raised his index finger and chanted loudly to the meteor ring with 3 triangular markings. Magic make a wish to the stars. I wish that all the timelines of the current universe except for the supreme little Superman on the origin wall, all superhumans have descended here due to various accidents. In an instant, the green glow flashed. The wishing ring shines brightly and illuminates the whole world. The next moment, space shattered, revealing hundreds of huge black holes. Screaming, roaring, raging airflow, lasers shooting everywhere. Son of Red, Black Superman, Supergirl, Supermaster, Armor Superman, Darkseid, General Zod, Parasitic Demon, Black Knee, Doomsday. Hundreds of superhumans and powerful enemies have shattered space and time due to accidents in battle, and at this time an even more terrifying scene appeared. It seems that due to the simultaneous arrival of Superman, time seems to have created a paradox. Sky, Earth, any space, the world is like a billion-order Rubik's Cube, and it begins to become extremely chaotic. Even time began to crumble, some forward, some backward. It's very weird. Russell is not idle either. He used his powerful spatial ability to pick up some injured villains, to pick up leaks. With the blessing of terrifying magic and powerful physical body, kill more than a dozen injured villains, and then throw them into the space ring. Suddenly, a sigh sounded, and a blue man with red fruit all over came out of the chaotic void. He looked at Russell with a sad expression and said without joy, I was just experimenting, but I didn't expect you to surprise me so much. Russell, who was in a high-speed state, smiled. Perhaps, it's more than that. The flames rose, and a man's loud laughter suddenly appeared. Aha, brother Russell, are you planning to promise me to be Satan? The next moment, a man in a suit stepped out from inside with a smile. But in the next second, Lucifer turned his head and burst into a foul mouth. Fac. Manhattan. Episode 150. Dr. Manhattan. Jonathan, whose real name is Jonathan, is a quantum physics scientist whose mind has entered another realm because of an accidental physical destruction. When he recondensed his body, he was no longer mortal, but a god. Quantum body. Quantum reactions. Quantum analysis. Move spacetime. Dominate the particles. Time observation. Reorganize the body. Immune cause and effect. Travel through time. manipulate probabilities. The scary thing is that when he teleports, he doesn't move himself. Instead, take yourself as the center and move the entire universe. But that's not the scariest yet. Dr. Manhattan also possesses an ability called the power of connection. That is the power to create matter and law out of nothing. At this moment, Russell actually regretted it a little. If you knew that it was Dr. Manhattan, maybe it was a better choice to go back to Marvel first. How did you get into trouble with this exhibitionist? Lucifer was not afraid of Manhattan, but he was still a little nervous at this time, and asked Russell in a low voice. It was not Russell who answered him. Dr. Manhattan, who emitted a hazy blue light, said calmly. He destroyed a structure I left on Mars to observe the current universe. I immediately felt a little strange after I perceived it, because when I left before, this would not have happened in the observed timeline. The corner of Russell's mouth twitched. I already knew that I would test the power of another planet at that time, but it's not surprising in the DC world, that's not normal. At this time, Dr. Manhattan looked at Russell and continued. When I returned to this universe, I discovered an anomaly. A person who shouldn't have been on this timeline in the first place appeared. That's you. I tried fiddling with the timeline to try to find out how you came about, but was surprised to find that you are equally immune to cause and effect. At that time, I wanted to come directly to observe you, but after fiddling with the timeline for the second time, I found a new accident. Dr. Manhattan's eyes appeared strange. I discovered that Superman is actually protected by the Wall of Origin, and no matter how it dies, a new Superman will appear. It's something I can't understand. Then he looked at Lucifer and shook his head slightly. I don't know why you like the useless thing of desire, but the meaning of life has long become insignificant to me. So, I wanted to do an experiment, because I once observed that the end of the fate of this universe is darkness. So I wonder, was Superman destroying me then? Or if I ended up destroying the multiverse? Or maybe there's a third wonderful fate. With that, Dr. Manhattan looked back at Russell. It is clear that the third fate he is talking about is Russell's interference, which is the future he cannot see. But immediately Manhattan shook his head again. He glanced at the super big brawl in the sky in a frozen state, and the collapsed spacetime sighed helplessly. But I didn't expect that your temper seems to be a little bad, and you actually lift the table without saying a word. Hearing this, Lucifer couldn't help but look at Russell with an innocent face. That's all for now. The last time he saw Russell, the other party obviously wanted to make a big explosion. And what is even more terrifying is that even his kind of existence senses the danger in the underworld. But right now, Lucifer's eyes became sharp, and he looked at Dr. Manhattan. Russell did the same, and at this time, he felt a creepy sense of crisis descend on him. If it weren't for a substitute for the death props, and Lucifer here, he would definitely have chosen to return to Marvel. However, I don't like failed trials. After Dr. Manhattan said lightly, he looked at Lucifer and asked calmly, I can't hurt you though, but you can't protect him. Lucifer's eyes turned into demonic eyes, and an evil smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Who said he needed my protection? Dr. Manhattan shook his head. I don't approve, because calculations show that the probability of him surviving is 0. The words fell, and terrifying blue energy burst out from his body in an instant. All the matter covered by the spread, even the space, all began to disintegrate. Russell's face changed and he wanted to return, but then he felt a pair of hot palms against the center of his back. At the same time, Lucifer's voice sounded in Russell's heart. Before I blamed the old man for not talking about martial virtue, but I didn't expect it to be used here. Now fully urge your low-grade version of God's voice. The power is supplied by me. In an instant, Russell felt an unimaginable angelic power coming from behind. Suddenly, new angel wings were constantly born on the body, and there were hundreds of pairs, like a holy sea of pure white, wrap him in the center. At the same time, at this moment, he seemed to feel that he had unimaginable power. It's as if destroying galaxies at will, and you can create everything with your hands. But Russell is not lost in this power that does not belong to him. Blessed by mechanical sanity and radiant emerald green, he had a clear mind and clearly remembered Lucifer's words. In an instant, Russell's eyes instantly became as bright as the sun. White feathers fell in the sky, and devout believers sang clear and solemn. Dr. Manhattan's face finally ceased to be calm, revealing a surprised look. At the same time, the body erupted with even more terrifying, completely unimaginable, incomprehensible power. That's the terrible power of connection. Suddenly, the white light descending in the sky and the newborn blue light collided together, constantly annihilating everything around and forming chaos. And with the blessing of Dr. Manhattan, the blue inside began to cause suppression little by little. Seems to be better, but Lucifer didn't panic at all. The next moment, in this scene like a god descending, Russell had a premonition in his heart, instinctively spoke, and a magnificent divine voice appeared. God says that all quantum mechanics is forbidden here. God said, forbid all spacetime fluctuations at this time. God said, all probability is forbidden here. God says, all cause and effect are forbidden here. God said, this place forbids all non-divine or evil beings survive. In an instant, endless pure white light flooded everything,